Hi everybody, and welcome back to part 7 of my Plastic Models for Beginners series, the Tamiya 1/35th scale M3A1 Scout Car in 1/35th scale. I think I said that. Weird. So, last video in part 6, we did steps 26 and 27. Now 26, not really so much. Well, kind of. I did build the one figure. And got him primed, so he's ready to start with paint. Also, I put together all the ammo boxes, put those in there. And I also did the decals. I think last time I did the paint, and then I did a clear coat in preparation for washes. Did the detail painting, got the shovel, pick, straps, the canvas stuff on the inside. So that's what I got done in part 6. So for part 7, it's time to start doing some wash stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my, since this is a dark green vehicle, I'm going to use black for my wash. Sometimes I don't like to use black so much just because it's, you know, kind of real, a little too dark, but I think in this case it'll be fine. So I'm going to find one of my, oh, you know what? I think I'll just use this. And get some of this here black stuff out of here like this. Put it in there like that. And then I will use, if I get the lid screwed back on, this is the Untitled 502 black ABT 110. And then I'm just using this odorless thinner by them. Let's see, this is my, make myself up some wash here, and we'll see how that looks, see if I need to add more black or more thinner or something. I'm going to use my, let's see, I'm going to use one of my mixing brushes to mix this up. It's one of those cheap tester's brushes that can be bought in the larger, I mean, you can get them at hobby shops too, I'm sure, but I get these for really cheap at the local chain hobby slash, well, it's mainly crafts, but it does have some hobby stuff, and you can get a pack of these things, different sizes and stuff, for pretty cheap. So this is my brush for cleaning, or my thinner for cleaning, I should say. And I'll zoom in here in a second once I determine this is what I want. So let's find my brush. I think I've got a couple of brushes that I use for this, and I think I will start with this one here. Get that loaded up. Let's try it somewhere. Let's try it down here. Oh yeah, that's spectacular. Look at that, filling in those details like nobody's business. Yeah, it looks good. That'll work. Okay, so let's try that. So let me zoom in here and we'll get cracking on this. Hopefully I won't get my fat noggin in the way. Alright, so let's go about this in some kind of an orderly fashion. See, the reason I'm using the black is because, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of contrast with this dark color. Let's see, let's do some up here. I'm just going to kind of get started, and I'm not going to do the whole kit on video here, because I mean it would take forever. But that'll just kind of help darken up those. And underneath here is a good place to try it, just because this is going to get covered by dirt and mud and stuff. Let's try some up here. Yeah, it's flowing pretty good. Basically just going to work my way all the way around this thing, around all the detail. Now, there's different ways of doing this. Some people will do their washes a little bit thicker and then come in and do cleanup with it. With a moistened brush. I tend to do it more like this here, where I'm just putting it pretty much where I want it, because I don't like to have to come back and clean it up. I mean, it takes a lot of time, and I'm kind of a slug like that. I don't want to have to, you know, do a bunch of cleanup and all that other nonsense. Okay, so there's that. Alright, so let's get around the lights here. Next, this probably not even going to see it much, but now this is part of the reason I did the clear, the gloss clear, because I find that if I don't with Tamiya paint, the wash will bleed into the surrounding super flat finish of the paint. It doesn't stay in the detail. So that's why I do it like this. Okay, let's get the stuff down on the side here. Like this. I could probably go a little bit darker, but I don't think it'll be necessary. So I may try something on this one I haven't done in a really long time, but I'll save that for later. See, I'm still getting a little bit of bleed, even with the clear. You can tell I didn't get it as good on certain parts of the kit. But it's working pretty good. So around the rivets or bolt heads or whatever these are supposed to be. piece of fuzz on the end of my brush. There, I got it. There's lots of bolts and stuff on here. So I'm just going to go around the vehicle like this. So I'll keep on like this. Come back here directly and take a look. Real quick, I'll show you kind of the reason I like doing these washes. The one on the left has had the black wash applied. This one hasn't. I don't know how it's showing up on camera, but it really gives it more of a three-dimensional look to it. It doesn't look quite so flat. And with wheels with detail like this in it, it works really good. Really changes the look of the wheel. And then that way, when later weathering happens, it makes it pop even more. So that's just a quick example, a good way to compare side by side of what it looks like between having the wash and not having the wash. It really is a good technique, fairly simple. Can be time consuming depending on the amount of detail, but it pays off in the end, I think. And then the other technique I'm going to try that I haven't done in a long time, we'll see if that further enhances it. Here's another place where it can really help is on weapons. A lot of fine detail on here. And putting this wash on here really helps to bring it out. Especially when you have cooling jackets. You just rub it across there and it'll fill in those holes, and it really brings out the detail. Like that. So another area where it's really helpful. So otherwise, some of this detail will just be lost. You wouldn't really notice it as much, but that really makes it look a little more three-dimensional, I guess. All right, with the pin wash done, I'm going to hit it with clear. And this time, I'm going to use my Tamiya Xf-86. I've only used this once, and I don't remember how I liked it, so I'm going to try it again. Let's see what happens. So first, I'll take my little mixing stick here and mix it up really good, because you can see the flat stuff kind of settles in the bottom. You gotta make sure it's mixed up really well, or else your day will be sad. Okay, that looks pretty good. hopefully this won't destroy this year model. So let's see, I need my for thinner and for Tamiya clear. So using X20A, probably mix the same as I did before, 0.5 milliliters or whatever crazy measurement that is. And then whoops, I will use 1 milliliter. I don't know why I always say 10, because that's not 10, that's 1. And just in case you ever think about doing something like this, it's always best to put the thinner in first if you're mixing it in your color cup, because that way it won't give you a big splat of your actual material that you're using. It will give you thinner first, so that way you can like test spray it on your surface or whatever, so it doesn't make a mess. All right, and let's get spraying. Okay, so you know what, I'm forgetting my glove. I sure don't like getting this stuff all over my fingers. Okay, let's start with the wheels. Let's go ahead and do the seats. And then start on this. Start with the bottom first. I don't really have that much to spray on the bottom because they didn't really do too much on the bottom as far as the gloss. I definitely want to make sure the visible parts are done. Alright, so there is the flat done. So with that done, let's take a look at a figure. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I've already put one layer on just to speed things up. But I'm using Vallejo model color Iraqi sand and putting a base coat of color on the skin portions of this little dude. I'm just using my Princeton Velvet Touch number 2 round brush I got from Hobby Lobby. It's pretty cheap, seems to be a decent brush. I use it for quite a few things actually, but this is just for the base coat. I'll be using better brushes for the actual detail painting. So you got that. And you want to make sure it's not too thick, because if it is, then it kind of fills in detail. It can be clumpy looking. And you don't want that. You don't want a clumpy looking dude. Or dudette if you have female figures you're painting. Now, keep in mind and remember, I am not a figure painter by any stretch of the imagination. Nowhere close. So keep that in mind. Alright, so there's a good layer, so we'll let that dry and then come back and see what we want to do next. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the uniform of this chap. And it's supposed to be black. But what I'm going to do is I don't want it to be like completely black, because that just wouldn't look right. So I'm going to use NATO Black Vallejo Model Air to actually paint his uniform. So I need a little bit of water. Because just plain black, it just doesn't look right. So I'll use this. Then I can use just pure black to do some shading, and then I can maybe mix some gray with this to make it to do some faux highlighting. Okay, so I got him all painted up here, the black, so we'll let that dry. So while that's drying, after I clean up my brush and my palette here, I'm going to glue this chap together. Then I'm going to jump back over onto this and start gluing the seats in. Okay, so for this dude here, we'll glow the legs first. No, I'm kidding, we'll glue them first. Now this is interesting because on this particular figure, where these two parts come together, there's actually pins and holes to help line it up. So that's kind of interesting. Not something you often see on figures. But it's pretty cool because these figures, especially older figures like in the last kit I did, they you know, they fit together pretty well and you kind of know where to put them, but there's a little bit of give. So if a figure's supposed to be in a given spot on the vehicle, sometimes you got to monkey around with a little bit to get it to fit exactly right. Whereas with these, if you're going to use them in their intended purpose, it's a lot easier to get the exact location. Just like on this one here, sometimes, you know, it's kind of rough getting a figure to fit because you don't know quite where the waist is supposed to be, so you kind of have to guess and kind of glue it up and then try and position it while it's still not quite set up. And if it's dependent on various body parts, you know, like this arm's supposed to go here, that arm's supposed to go there, the body's supposed to be twisted a certain way, feet are fitting between some seats or something like that, and you got to make sure it's, you know, all just so. It can make it a little bit more difficult. Like this one here, for instance, it's got a little right angle tab or whatever you want to call it there, and an indent there, so you can get it exactly where it needs to be. So that's really kind of groovy. So I'm going to use this glue on this one just because I want to make sure I got a little bit of time to work. Put him together like that. That's epic. So we'll let that set up for a second. The head I won't glue on. I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the other one. I'll drill a hole, skewer his head on a stake to make it easier to paint the facial features and stuff. This one's got some pretty groovy facial expression going on there. He's really hollering at somebody. Either that or he's yawning. Could be tired, I suppose. Alright, so let's do this arm. This one, it's got again a tab, you know, like a little raised portion there that fits in a slot right there. So again, I'm going to use this glue here. Then I'll use some extra thin to seal up the edges, but this will at least get the arm in place. Like that. Arm holding a pistol there. And then this arm, same thing. Because this guy fits here with that hand resting on the machine gun track there. So that's pretty cool. So let's let him dry up a little bit, and then we'll so while that's drying up, I'm going to go ahead and get the seats and start gluing those into place. So peel these off. Okay, for this one, the front seats, you got to remember that the pins are staggered on the passenger side and even or parallel with the front of the seat on the driver's side. So I'm going to use some stupendous glue here for this. I hope I can there we go. So there's that one. And then these go sideways, then those there go facing backwards, and these go sideways. And there it is. Those are all glued in. So now, let's jump back on this other guy here. Let's see what we got. Okay, so I'm trying a little experiment here, and let's see if it works. So what I did is, if you will remember, I used Iraqi sand, or Arena Iraqi, Vallejo model color as a base. So using my Untitled 502 Flesh color set, I used Flesh Shadow and just covered his whole face with that. So now what I'm going to do, I have a paper towel here handy, and I am going to try something. This isn't something that I've magically come up with all on my own. I've seen similar things done like this before, and I just want to try it out to see if I can get this a dry brush. Nope, no thinner or anything on it. And I want to try something because I've seen this done before, to where by dragging it down like this, I'm just pulling it down, it's taken most of it off of the figure's features like that, and leaving it in the recesses to act as shadows. I'm not getting underneath, you know, the jawline. I'm just going to leave that so it looks, you know, darker. And then I'll let this dry a bit. Already that looks better than what I've done in the past. And then with that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the, oh yeah, that's looking pretty dandy. I like that. Then what I'll do is I'll use some of the highlighting colors, and I'll hit the highlights like the upper cheekbones, chin, the nose, stuff like that. And then I'll blend those like you normally do with oils. But this will give me a decent base right here. Man, that looks pretty good. I'm stoked, as the surfers here in California say. I like that. So anyway, I'm gonna let that dry for a bit, and as you can see, I've already done it to the dude's mitts here. Except I'm doing it crosswise to leave deposits in his, you know, where his fingers come together. Stellar. All right, we'll let that dry for a few minutes. All right, so let's paint some boots and a belt. Got my Vallejo model color, just plain old black. Hopefully I'll be able to see a difference between the black and the NATO black, but we shall see. Yeah, pretty good difference there. So it'll look different enough. I mean, I don't know if you can tell on the video, but it is quite a bit blacker than the NATO black. Just what I was wanting. I'll have to crack out with a smaller brush to paint the belt because this one's a bit fat. Alright, so now I'm going to try and hit this bloke up with some highlights. So, using the light flesh tone, I am going to try and very carefully add light flesh tone to the bridge of his nose here. Whoa, to his nose. Chin. His cheekbones. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to come up with a way to highlight or to paint this stuff with a minimal of effort, because I'm not a figure painter. And at this point in my career, I do not feel like being a figure painter, but I would like to be able to add figures to my models that look halfway decent. Okay, so we got that. So let me cork this back up. I'm going to clean this brush, and I'm going to get out my stippling brush and see what I can do to get it to look a little more blended, not quite so stark. Alright, so let's see what we can do. I'm just using a 5.0 brush. I don't know if it's really a 5.0. It looks pretty big, but I just want to blend that in a bit to where it's not so not so stark. One thing that's kind of nice about these newer Tamiya figures is their facial detail is way better. Crikey, that looks pretty good. I'm digging that. So there you go. That figure's face is painted. So now I'm going to glue his noggin on and then try and put him in place in his truck. Alright, and there's Mr. Driver in position. He's ready to drive this truck as soon as I get some wheels on it. But until then, he's going to have to deal with it. So let's see, what can I do next? So the next thing I need to do is I need to prime the other figure that I'm going to demonstrate painting on. So I'm going to do that and then come back and take a look at where we are. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is I've mentioned it briefly earlier that I was going to try something I haven't done in a long time, and that's dry brushing. And I'll demonstrate it here in a second, but hopefully you can see here, this one has been dry brushed, this one hasn't. And all it is just a way to make the detail pop out more. And if you've done a good job with the wash, your dry brushing is really going to bring out the details really well. For example, look at the lug nuts on here. They look pretty good. But on here, depending on the detail of the molding on the model, you can see the separation between the nut and the actual bolt going through. So it's a very old technique. It's been around forever, and you know, a lot of people say it's outdated and, you know, kind of dumb, but it's still very effective. And all you do is you get just a little bit of paint. Now what I'm using here is I'm using khaki because it's kind of a green base, but it's lighter than the color. Okay, then you just rub as much off as you can. You don't want any on there because you don't want it to streak or anything. And then, and you can use different brushes, but this one seems to be working for what I'm wanting to do here. And then you just flick it back and forth across the detail like this. And you want to just do it real lightly, just a little bit of paint, because it's easier to build it up than it is to take it off. Because if you get too much, it'll really do a number on your paint job. See, already it's the rim, the edge of the rim there is really starting to pop out. Now, some people do this in a more tedious method. You can basically do the same thing, and a lot of people, you know, do it from time to time. And that's, you just use a lighter color and you just individually paint all those details, which, you know, that's cool if you like doing that, but that takes forever. And you know what? I'd rather do it this way and get it done a little quicker. It's a little more random too. It's not quite as precise, so it gives you variation. But the edges, the curves on the rim, it brings those out. And that's what you get. And this is just another layer of weathering. You can do other stuff on top of it, you know, whatever else. You can add your mud and all that kind of stuff. But this is a good way to make the detail kind of pop a little bit more. Like that. So I'm going to work on those other two wheels, and then I'll demonstrate some on the actual vehicle itself. Alright, so now I'm going to do a little bit more dry brushing. I've already done some on the sides. Again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just getting a little bit of the khaki, since it's kind of a greenish base. Wiping most of it off of the brush and lightly hitting the details and the high points. Like this. Now this is just one of many layers of weathering that's going to happen, so keep that in mind as you do this. But it does help bring out the detail. Kind of hit the edges, stuff like that. This, coupled with the pin wash you did earlier, will really help bring out the details. So you can see here, those stand out way more than those do. And the nice thing is it really it's really pretty easy. But as I said when I was working on the wheels, less is more. You want to do very little. You want to have very little paint on the brush because you don't want to get any streaking or anything, and it's better to build it up than to get too much on there and mess it all up, because I guarantee you'll not be very stoked. There will be much wailing, gnashing of teeth, all that kind of stuff. It's a very old technique, been around forever, and still effective. And I haven't used it in a long time myself, but I was monkeying around with it on something else, and I thought, man, I'm crazy, I gotta do this. It really helps. It really helps with the detail. So I think that will probably do it, because I already did all the way around these other parts. I wanted to do that and not bore you with, taking forever to do it. But it really looks good. I'm digging it. I'm stoked. So, with that, really help this diamond plate pop out too. Okay, so with that, let's move on back onto the other figure. All right, so I did the same thing on this one that I did on the other one. I did the Iraqi sand base, and then I put the flush shadow on there. So now I'm going to do a little bit more on this one than I did on the other one, just because this one is going to be more visible. Obviously the guy, driving the vehicle, you can't even see his face because of the actual vehicle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get something to put this oil paint on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Get a little bit of this. I'm going to do the inside of his ears. I'm not really doing this in the best position because I don't want to get my fat head in the way of the camera lens. So hopefully I can do this without making too much of a mess. And I'll do a little bit of blending once I get it done. I'm using shadow brown, by the way. And I'm using a, whoa, all the stuff's coming off. This is like a number 2 Da Vinci brush. It is sable or something. Yeah, Usuri sable. So this is
sable is a species of marten, a small omnivorous mammal primarily inhabiting the forest environments of Russia, from the Ural Mountains throughout Siberia and northern Mongolia. Want to hear more?
No thanks. So there you go. My phone assistant, I don't want to say her name because she'll like start talking again, just told us what the what that was. So that's really cool. A little bit of scientific info for you there, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. So anyway, I was listening to a what you call podcast today, and I've heard quite a few people of late. People are starting to realize that you don't need like a 10-0 brush to do detail painting. All you need is a brush that has a really good point. And in fact, especially when you're using, it's a lot better to have a bigger brush because it holds more paint and flows better. But anyway. Put a little bit in the eyes here. Now, I'm not okay, so there's that. So next I need to do some highlights, and I'll do those on the hands at the same time. And just like I did on the other guy, I'm not going for an award-winning figure here. I just want something to look halfway decent on the model. So I'm going to do light flesh tone to do some highlights. And it doesn't take much. Get too much on there and you're gonna make a big old blobby mess. Okay, so that'll do. So I'll clean my brush off and then fetch out my blending brush. Okay, so here is his face. That'll work. So next I have to start painting the uniform and his hat and all that kind of jolly stuff. So using the painting guide here, his hat is a combination of Xf-52 and Xf-53, which is flat earth and neutral gray. So flat earth, which is Xf-52, and I have something similar in tan earth from Vallejo. So that's what I'm going to use for that part. So basically what it boils down to is the outside part is the tan earth and the top part is the gray. So let's see. I think I'll do the gray first. I could have just left it the gray primer, it looks like, since they're so similar appearance. Alright, so there's that. And then for the uniform, I am going to use Vallejo Russian uniform, World War II. So there's all that. So I'll set him aside to dry, and then I will get the head out again. Paint the other color for that. Okay, so let's see. This will be the tan earth. A little water. Carefully. Paint this. And there's that. So we'll let that dry good. And then alright, next up I gotta do the boots and the pistol. Now the pistol, it calls for gunmetal, but in this case I think it's best that I do black and then highlight it a little bit with gunmetal, because gunmetal can just be too metallic looking. Something like a pistol, almost like my machine guns there. But anyway, right now we're going to do some boots. I think I'll do the pistol first. And these boots are going to get some dust and some highlighting done whenever I get to the next stage, because I've still got to do some shading and highlighting on his uniform. But we'll get to that once this stuff has a chance to dry really well. So while this stuff is drying, I should probably start thinking about getting this windshield business ready to roll. Here's the real trick though, is installing these things after everything's been assembled. That should be a neat trick. Alright, so there's that. So now we got to put them in place and glue them. So let's see here. Okay, there's that. Shouldn't be too hard to get it glued in there. Alright, so now I need to start doing a little bit of shading. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some shadows. And for that I am using Russian uniform and black, and my handy dandy new wet palette. So we'll see how this works. So I need to get, whoa, shnikes. Need to get a little bit of water here in case I need it. Now I'm really going to try and do this where you can see it, but I'm not making any promises. Now I'm going to try and do this like I've seen others do it, and that's just doing a real thin translucent shading, so it's not opaque because it's translucent. Makes a lot of sense, eh? This is the part I really have the hardest time with because it's kind of shameful, actually, considering I used to be an art student and I've just forgotten so much, and I haven't done any of it in so long that it just I just don't remember how to do shading, and I never did three-dimensional type stuff anyway back in those days. I do like how this paint's going down though, and this wet palette, I had a homemade one before and it was kind of cool, but this one is really cool. I really like it. So I'm going to work on this a little bit and then come back. Okay, so I got the dark done. So now it's time to do some it's time to do some highlights. Do a little bit more here and then I'll do some highlights. Just using real thin paint here to it's almost a wash, to kind of blend it a little bit. I hope you can see this stuff. Nope, my fat noggin's not getting in the way. I'm gonna do a little bit more here. Some really thin paint. Really thin shading color to kind of get some of these deeper shadows blended in a little bit. Okay, that's a little bit more here. It's kind of stark looking. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna hit it with some highlights. Cool. Okay, let's try this one more time. I had 3 other segments. They're gone. They came out sideways on the camera, and I can't figure out how to rotate it on the app on the camera or on the Apple phone. So what I did was I cut off the holster, map case, binoculars, glued those in place, painted the leather stuff with Vallejo model color leather brown, and the binoculars with Vallejo model color, model air, NATO black. So he's done. He's ready to fit into place. But wait, he's not going into place yet, because in the next video I'm going to start doing the weathering. So that's the end of part 7 of the Tamiya 1/35 scale M3A1 Scout car for the Plastic Models for Beginners series. So if you have any hints, tips, questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, name calling, anything like that, put them in the comments section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So until we come back for part number 8, as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.